Protective and Social Services Committee. And the members are myself, Councillor O'Toole, Councillor Bressie, Councillor Thiessen, and Mayor Clayton. And with that, we're looking for today the Director Services Area Report. Mr. Manuel, can you go ahead?
Okay. Thank you very much. So in community social development, it's reported that the Youth Advisory Council is going to be entering an active recruitment phase for its 2022-23 team with an application deadline set for September 30th. Additionally, Community Social Developed hosted an unconscious bias training session on July 21st, and the next session is planned to occur in September. In enforcement services, they report that daily patrols continue in areas of concern for the city. This includes presence of daily patrols on foot throughout the downtown core. Additionally, dedicated traffic unit has been assigned patrols in hotspots such as 68th Avenue around the Community Knowledge Campus, 83 Avenue, 102A Street, 116th Street, and 97th Avenue, looking for some specific concerns that have been raised. In the fire department, a new engine has been received and registered and is currently being upfitted with the appropriate equipment. This is just a replacement engine, not in addition to the fleet, but exciting nonetheless, as it brings some new features along with it. Training for all members of the department are going to be taking place throughout August, and we anticipate it to be in active service in early September. Additionally, 3 new firefighters have began their careers with the city and started training on August 2nd. And a couple of promotions have occurred as well, where there is a new training officer. So Jason Gordon has promoted from the suppression staff up to the training branch, and will be working with the chief training officer to provide members training across the department. And GP 911 has recently took part in a competitive bidding process for a new contract with a small city, and we're hopeful that we'll see the results of that here shortly. In the RCMP, they had one particular incident they wanted to highlight, which was an August 1st incident that occurred at 2 o'clock in the morning, where the Grande Prairie RCMP had been conducting patrols in the area of 96th Street and 116th Ave, when they recognized a vehicle that had previously failed to stop for them as they attempted some enforcement action. The traffic stop was attempted again. However, the vehicle fled at high rates of speed, and ultimately they lost view of the suspect, who later on that morning actually collided with an RCMP vehicle through another intersection. As a result, the driver was subsequently arrested, taken to hospital. Both he and the RCMP officer, who also went to hospital, had non-life-threatening injuries. As a result, the individual was ultimately charged with flight from police, dangerous driving, failed to comply with probation, and operation of a motor vehicle while prohibited, and was ultimately remanded into custody pending future court hearings. That is the report.
Thank you very much. Open to questions for the report. Thank you. We'll move on. We'll go to item 3.2, the Rotary Ukrainian initiatives. Ms. Sutherland, please.
Morning, everybody. So on June 27th, Mr. Joel Park and Mr. Mark Woods arrived as a delegation to council from the Rotary Club of Grande Prairie and requested support regarding the Ukrainian refugees. At that time, council approved funding for up to $100,000 to support their cause, and administration was directed to come back and provide information on gift in kind options and connect Mr. Park with relevant services. So at that time, administration had met with Joel Park and connected him to relevant services. And in tandem with that, relevant departments connected, and recognizing that The need was time sensitive. Administration has developed a package to welcome newcomers with refugee, work permits, and student visa status that are new to Canada within 3 months to be eligible for a one-time Explore GP welcome package. So included in the package is a Recreation 5-punch pass, Activity and Reception Center 5-punch pass, a Transit 1-month pass, and in addition to that, some relevant resources included. So administration felt that at this time that it would be wise to be inclusive and equitable, to include other refugees that are coming through different channels in order to be provide services to all that fall under the same qualifications. So although there's no additional financial or budget implications, administration wanted to show the costs of the gift in kind, which is listed in the report there. And at this time, administration continues to connect with the Rotary Club, with Mr. Park to provide any relevant support. We've provided connections with the Grande Prairie Local Immigration Partnership. In addition to that, I'd like to highlight as well that the Grande Prairie Center for Lifelong Learning had responded very quickly to their request by offering free classes during the summer, which were full. And so at this point, because the demand is quite high, they're looking at additional funding to support classes in the fall, but at this time are not able to offer free. And so the executive director there is looking at opportunities to provide additional grant funding, but are willing at this time to support 50% of the cost. At this time, too, I'd like to update that 10 families and 30 individuals have accessed this program, and the majority of those are actually, all of them come through the Rotary Club group. So with that, that's the end of my report, and I look forward to any questions.
Thank you very much for that report. I was going to ask you that same question. What number of families and individuals? So thanks for including that in your report. I have Councillor Bosch, Councillor Bressie, Councillor Berg, and I think that's Councillor Thiessen. Go ahead, Wendy.
Thank you, Chair O'Toole. Thank you, Ms. Sutherland, for the report. I'm happy to see that there's progress on this. I do have some concerns about the English language programs. I understand that the 2 classes that have been complete to the end of August, or to be completed by the end of August, are full, but there's still more immigrants coming in. And I've had 2 occasions now I've been told that when they're asked to pay half, the $280, they don't have the money and they walk away. And so that's a concern to me. So whether, you know, that goes to the Rotary Club or, you know, Lifelong Learning finds some grants, I'm curious, what is the timeline for Lifelong Learning to find grants? And like, this isn't something that we can wait till, you know, next year. What does that look like?
Thank you for the question through the chair. In discussions with the executive director, they're actively looking now. And so we don't have a report on exactly where they're at with that. But at this time, I think that we can be confident in that he's continuing to look for ways to subsidize the additional costs, because it does cost them to run the programs, and whatever it qualifies, like there's certain refugees that qualify under certain programs. So he's looking into the optional funding sources for that. In the meantime, we've connected with Mr. Park to discuss this option with him. And if there's an opportunity to help support the ones that come through the Rotary Club in terms of subsidy with the potential dollars that are coming through to the city. So they're in that current conversation with that at this time. So that is the current status of that, and recognizing that it's a time-sensitive thing, administration will follow up with him to see where he's at.
That's good, because grants take up forever, right? And so that's if we're only going down that avenue, it's going to be difficult. So,
well, through the chair as well, I think because this is such a really emergent need, I suspect that there's opportunities that are at hand. It's just working with the executive director to see where he's at with that.
Okay, thank you for working with the other organizations.
Councillor Bressie.
Great, thank you. I'm just curious about the 1 month transit pass. I'm inclined to see if we can get that to be a little bit longer so people have time to find a job and get their first paycheck. But if council did want to see that longer, is there any reason that would be administratively difficult to extend that longer than a month?
Through the chair, I don't see any difficulty with that. It's just a matter of, it was time sensitive at the time. We wanted to support people as quickly as we could. So in discussions with Mr. Harvard, we came up with this option, and we'd certainly be open to extending that if council desires.
Great. And then after everybody's had a chance for questions, when the chair lets me, I'd like to make a motion to that. Would administration, I'd assume that since this is a financial matter, that should be a committee recommends to council a change to that if I want to make a motion? Or could committee direct that since this is a gift in kind, not actually financial? Committee? All right, great. I've got a motion. Chair O'Toole, when you feel it's appropriate.
Okay. Mr. Berg.
Thank you, Chair O'Toole. So, Ms. Sutherland, I know a lot of this unfolded on our council break, but one of the things that I'd heard during the council break, and I know some time has passed since, but was families accessing some of this. So a couple questions, but is there a designated contact that if somebody was to phone City Hall would they be referred to a specific person within Rotary? Because that seemed to be a bit of a challenge.
Through the chair, I'm just asking for clarification, or are you?
Well, I guess if the phone rings here at City Hall and somebody says, "Hey, I've sponsored a refugee family," where would we direct them specifically?
At this time, they would be directed to our office.
Okay.
If they're calling City Hall.
Okay, and I'm assuming now that we have written the check, and as far as passes go, do they pick those up here or do they pick them up through Rotary?
When people are interested in the passes, what we've been directing in discussions with Mr. Park, they're directed to apply. And so we're removing the documentation requirements, but we still have to have relevant information to enter them into the system. So they're referred to us.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Thiessen.
Thanks so much, Chairman O'Toole. Thanks for the report to Ms. Sutherland and for the work working with our Rotary Club, Mr. Joel Park. My question for you is, so under the risk, I know you sort of alluded that we're going to keep it open for other immigrants to receive this package as well to make it more equitable. But that's I just wanted to clarify that that's a thing, right? With the risk that we have no risk, that we are setting up this package program for all immigrants, not just the ones connecting through Rotary?
Through the chair, yes, that's correct. We want to make sure because there's many people that are coming through different channels that have the same qualifications, and so we wanted to make sure that we were equitable in that.
Great. So I guess my question is, in regards to, I guess, the partnerships that we have in the community through GP LIP, our Center for Newcomers, are we aware of how many immigrants are coming to the Grande Prairie area that we might be supporting on a month-to-month basis, or that would receive this package?
Through the chair, I don't have a wholesome number on the number of refugees that are coming in. I do know that through talking with Mr. Parks in terms of the Rotary Club connection, there's approximately 53 in Grande Prairie right now and anticipating another 34 in the next few months. We can certainly circle back with the Center for Newcomers to get some information on that.
Okay, and would we be advertising at the Grande Prairie Center for Newcomers that these packages are available for landed immigrants?
Yes, we have connected with all the partners at GP's at the Grande Prairie Local Immigration Partnership and advised them of this package and what's needed to qualify.
Awesome, thank you very much.
Go ahead, Ms. Blackmore.
Ms. Sutherland, I just want to ask a clarifying question. So these packages are for immigrants in general or refugees specifically?
Thank you for the question. Through the chair, it's newcomers with refugee, work permits, and student visa status.
Thank you for that clarification. Still debating if I should let you speak. Mr. O'Connor, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Chair O'Toole. I have 4 points. One, I agree with Councillor Bressie that we should be extending the bus pass and some of these things so that people can get their way and find their way around town. It's been very difficult for them. I also agree that we need to extend the ESL and find some funds ourselves to be able to support these people, because if you can't speak the language, you can't get a job. And if you can't get a job, you're hooped. So I think it's important that we take a look at that. And the third thing is in speaking with a couple of the persons from Ukraine, daycare is a huge issue for them because they're single parents. They have children. They have nowhere to put their kids when they go to work, and they're not getting high-paid jobs, so it's going to be a huge challenge for them. So I'm wondering if there can be a look into how we can provide some daycare for these people. And lastly, I want to congratulate your department for an excellent job.
Thank you. To all. All right, was there any other questions? Mr. Bressi, you think you want to do some business, do you?
Yeah, thank you, Chair O'Toole. I would move the committee direct administration to include 3 months of transit in the Explore GP welcome package. And just speak to this, I think the number one need people have to integrate with community is to be able to get around that community. And just from talking to some of the Rotary folks and also in some previous situations I had with refugees from other countries, it takes about a month and a half for these folks to get settled into the community and find a job. And then if it's taking a month and a half to find a job, that means it's taking you actually about 2 months until you get your first paycheck. And after you get that first paycheck, there's probably a few really urgent needs. So I think that 3 months is an appropriate time to let these people have a chance to really get their feet up and make sure they're getting around the community to get to essential appointments and get those first few shifts of their job. So I hope the committee will support this motion.
Okay. Any questions regarding this motion? And I call for the vote. Perfect. That passes unanimously. Councillor Thiessen.
Thank you very much, Chair O'Toole. Before we get into any other business, I did have a question that popped into my head in regards to our refugees and immigrants. As far as I'm not 100% aware what the level of support is from our federal government, but I do know that they have a package for refugees and for landed immigrants. Is administration aware of the type of supports that are coming in from the federal or provincial levels of government to support people coming into Canada?
Ms. Sutherland?
Thank you for the question through the chair. At this time, the federal financial support includes a one-time financial benefit to evacuees in Canada under the Canadian Ukraine Transitional Assistance Initiative. And I just want to preface that this has been shared with relevant partners regarding this, including Mr. Park. So this provides a one-time payment of $3,000 per adult, 18 years and older, and $1,500 per child, 17 years and under. And administration will be more than happy to share this with council, if so choose. There's an additional, so there's a link as well. Eligible individuals are expected to access this benefit prior to applying for new financial supports. So there's a process around that. And to be eligible, they have to be under that Ukraine-Canada authorization for emergency travel. And then Ukrainians that are not part of that program are encouraged to contact the federal government about their eligibility and direction on how to apply. So those are the ones that we do know at this point in time.
Okay, and that doesn't apply to any other immigrants, just Ukraine refugees?
That's the information we have regarding Ukrainian evacuees, yeah.
Okay, I look forward to seeing that in the future. And if there are no questions, thank you very much for that, Ms. Sutherland. I'd move that committee receive this report for information.
Thank you. All in favor? That passes unanimously as well. So just a comment or two. I was at the airport when the Afghan refugee family come in, and that was federally funded, supported, the whole issue there. And as my Rotary Club that I belong to, there has been a lot of moving in individuals. So we've been able to get furniture and supply the apartment or home with furniture for them. It's pretty basic, but it's there, and it seems to be pretty smooth. In fact, there was a issue where kids were in not daycare, but programs run by the city, and nobody could get them there and nobody could pick them up, but the Rotary picked them up and delivered them at the times when the programs were over. So the community in itself has been really supportive of this program. So with that, we'll move on to item 3.3, bicycle safety initiatives. And we'll have Mr. Lefebvre and Mr. Gear presenting. Ready when you are.
Good morning, all. Through the chair. Obviously, you've read the report on current bike safety initiatives and potential bike safety initiatives. We would just like to highlight some of the identified points here. Is that upon this coming to light, we did do a search of complaints to the RCMP or enforcement services relating to pedestrians and cyclists, and found that there had been nothing reported to either agencies. Furthermore, city enforcement conducts regular bike patrols throughout the parks, downtown area, the parks, and the trail system, more so through the, and always enforce the bike safety, but also through the positive ticket program, where the officers issue a positive tickets summer program, which is coming to an end, to the youth specifically of the community engaging in safe acts, for example, wearing their helmets and encouraging others to do the same. One of the things that we did identify through this report is that we do have a bike lane in the city. It's actually on 102nd Street, but only goes from 108th Avenue to 113th. So for 5 blocks, there's actually a bike lane on either side, which is the only one within the municipality. We did touch on the related bylaws, provincial legislation, and then, as you see, the different bicycle safety enhancement. All in all, I think that the legislation is sufficient to regulate bike safety in our community. However, some minor additions could be added if council sees it necessary. For example, the addition of cyclists indicating their presence when overtaking potentially a pedestrian or another cyclist, and also the signage, as there is no signage in either the parks or trail systems. Potentially signage advising both the pedestrians and cyclists to remain to the right side of the trails, but also for the cyclists to yield to pedestrians in the trail systems or the parks. That concludes our report. We're just open for any questions if you have any.
Okay, I just got a couple comments. Has any officers been to any of the bike skills parks and just been present there?
Yeah, we've actually gone down to the skate parks and so on. We've actually participated in the Safety First program also this summer.
Okay, thank you. So I got Councillor Blackmore, O'Connor, and Thiessen, and Bosch.
Do you need to go first, Chris? I did not know that having a bell or a horn is a legal requirement on a bike. I was surprised by that. When bike patrols are out in the park and meeting with other bikers on the trails, do they address that issue at all if people don't have bells?
You know what, I'd have to come back to, through the chair, thank you for that question. I'd like to come back with you on that. I'm not, they do discuss.
I can help you out a bit. Thank you for the question. Through the chair, when our officers are out, whenever possible, they try to engage, particularly young people, and make them aware of everything that is required on a bicycle. We're very hesitant to actually go to any sort of enforcement. You know, we'd rather have for a young person, we'd rather have a conversation with that and say, you know, please this is actually, you're supposed to have a bill. Maybe you could talk to your parents about this. We haven't been actually doing enforcement. It's been more conversations, and that's when the officers are going to the bike parks and when they do patrols in the parks.
I'm not a biker, but I am a walker, so
Yes.
I share the trails with bikes. It's not, in my experience, it's not youth who are an issue on the trails. It's adults who are biking at a very high speed. If we're going to add signage to the trails anyway, it would be, I think, appropriate to remind people on the signage that they need to ring their bell. I'm sure Councillor Thiessen can help you come up with a fun way to do that.
Speaking of Councillor Thiessen, if you'd like to go ahead and ask your questions.
Thank you very much, Chair O'Toole. Actually, just a comment to Councillor Blackmore's. The favorite part of my bike is the bell, and I think I overdo it when I'm driving around. I see someone 10 feet away, I'm like, ding, ding. You cannot overdo it. No, I don't think you can overdo it. I love it, but maybe I'll get a bike horn to go with my clown hair. And wonka, wonka. Anyways, just a question for you gentlemen. So I know when this motion came forward on bike safety, I voted against it, and I got some weird looks across the table. But I think part of the motion included what we were doing around e-bikes, and I think Councillor O'Connor brought that one up. And I didn't see that anywhere in the report. And actually, I voted against it because I said e-bikes aren't a big deal, and then I went for a walk on the trails, and I ran into about 7 or 8 e-bikes just ripping up the dirt paths on the trails. So I guess there might be a motion coming after this on how we address e-bikes. I like the signage stuff, but have you guys done any research on e-bike and e-bike safety along trailways and what other municipalities are doing in regards to this?
No, we haven't. Through the chair, no, we haven't. We did look at some of the bylaws from other municipalities who have either bike lanes, designated areas for bikes or e-bikes, for example, but we have not specifically looked at e-bikes for Grande Prairie.
Okay, yeah, so I think I'll probably bring a motion forward by the end of this just in regards to that, and probably signage, but I look forward to seeing how what Mike O'Connor might have for questions since I jumped him in the queue. Thanks.
Go ahead, Mr. O'Connor.
Well, you're very quiet today. You're scaring me. Okay, thank you very much. I'm glad that you looked into it. I do have a concern, and I'm glad you searched other communities and did your homework. I'm concerned about not everyone will report a close call. And that's part of the issue. I personally have been passed on both sides at the same time by guys on bikes. And I've talked to a number of people. I've had a number of residents who called me who have been almost knocked over and clipped. So it's concerning that people are not respecting people. And the bell thing, I'm glad you're making that. And I did not know that was a legislation, so I think it needs to be enforced. So I really think that, I mean, who's going to listen to me? Oh, I almost got hit on the trails. I mean, you're wasting your time. You've got to catch somebody doing it. So I really think it's more of being aware and making people aware that they should be courteous and that pedestrians have the right of way. And I even interviewed the guy that runs that unicycle, the powered one, and I asked him the same question. And he said, he says, I make enough noise that people know I'm coming, and he plays his music very loud. So he has been aware that there have been close calls. So, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bosch.
Thank you, Chair O'Toole. My question is into the enforcement services bike patrols. The frequency this summer, for me, it doesn't seem like I see them at all in the Corps, particularly like I used to see them. So is the frequency changed?
Thank you for the question. Through the chair, it has been less this year than previous years. With some of the other pressures that we have been facing, it's been difficult to get personnel out on bikes. We certainly realize that that is something that the city likes and likes to see them out. And when they are out, they can get into some of the nooks and crannies that you can't do with a vehicle, and certainly cover more distance than on a foot patrol. So we will try to get them out. In fact, we're hoping to get them out today. It's just been other pressures that have curtailed it a little bit, but we know it's a priority, and we'll endeavor to have them out as much as possible.
Okay, I'd like to see that more for sure, because that presence is certainly positive in the community.
Yes.
And if there is pressures elsewhere, maybe that's a conversation we need to have with, Director Manuel in regards to, what is going on, whether it's staffing or hours or cost. Thank you.
Director Manuel, you got something to add to this conversation?
Yeah, just further to that, I think where the shift you would see is historically resources we would have allocated to the bike patrols are the foot patrol presence that we're trying to deploy through the Corps at the moment. So it ultimately does come down to resource limitations, and we send the resources where the greatest need is at the time. And for this year, it's been identified some of those specific foot patrol areas.
So my follow-up to that would be, if you're on a bike patrolling, can you get around to more places and, patrol more than you would on foot patrol? In my mind, I would think so. Why would we pick foot patrol over bike patrol?
So you're correct in that you can cover more geographical area, but if the concentration, the density of the activity that we're trying to proactively engage is in a small geographical area, which in this case it is, it makes more sense to be on foot than it does on bike. The bikes allowed us to basically cover Crystal Lake all the way through South Bear Creek, and that is where we are hearing, obviously, some of the concern around some of the conduct on bicycle pathways. But comparatively speaking to the social disorder issues we're trying to address in other areas, the focus has been on the social disorder issues, and the bikes aren't the preferred mechanism to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much for those answers. Councillor Bressie.
Yeah, thank you. I look forward to seeing what motion Councillor Thiessen has. I just wanted to echo both what Councillor Thiessen and Councillor Blackmore said in terms of the biggest concern I have is adults barreling down the hard surface paths, and e-bikes have changed it. I've noticed that just you can get a lot more speed up there. An e-bike's a lot heavier than a road bike. An adult is a lot heavier than a kid riding it. And I see close calls several times every summer, and it just takes one collision to really make us go, gee, I wish we would have done more about this. So, and I don't know if that's an enforcement thing. I don't know if that's an education thing, but I definitely do look forward to seeing the motion, because it is a problem that I see. And I've had people tell me that they don't feel safe walking through Muskogee Park at times because they've seen too many close calls.
Just got a couple comments. I was down at the Stanley Park in Vancouver, and they've got their pathways designed. So if you're riding your bike, you're on this side. If you're walking, you're in the middle. And if you're coming this way, you're on the other side in your bike. Now, that was what they did. And I can tell you, if you got your foot on the bike path, the bikers yell at you. I know I got yelled at because I didn't have any idea what they were for. But there is, as you go through, there is signage, and it works quite well. And yes, there are people with bells, and when they're passing you, like, it's a very organized system down there. And there are speed limits, actually. So they tell you to slow down. They tell you what the speed limit is, so you don't have the guys trying to race to the next stop or whatever it is. So I'm not saying that that's something that we implement, but it was something that that was 8 years ago that I went there, and it still sticks in my mind that they're going to that much care. But there's a lot of people walking on those paths as well. So with that, Councillor Thiessen, you had some business that you wanted to start.
Sure do, but first things first, I did have a couple more questions.
Go ahead.
I'll just make a quick comment. I'm definitely not for bike lanes, especially in Grande Prairie. I think it's an additional cost, and widening our roads are a little weird. And I think council, a couple terms back, we worked to widen our sidewalks so that pedestrians and cyclists could walk comfortably along the sidewalks. It might be, maybe I might have to look at Director Glavin again, but in comparison, I feel like in some cities they have a lot more narrow sidewalks, and Grande Prairie we have wider sidewalks. So just a general gaze across the pathways, I would assume that Grande Prairie has a bit wider sidewalks. Is that true, Director Glavin? Do we have a different standard than most cities?
Thank you through the chair. So our standards are guided by the Transportation Association of Canada. Depending on the location, the traffic, pedestrians, you'll see some variation. So adjacent to a school, you might see wider sidewalks, but in the generally throughout residential areas, wherever we can, I believe our standard's 1.5 meters. Is regarding the pathways and arterial roads, we're aiming for, I think, in the range of 2 meters for those.
Yeah, that's what I thought, especially around the larger roads and stuff like that. So I think we're on our way to, you know, creating efficient pathways around our city without having to create bike lanes. The other question that I had was in regards to signage. It's my understanding that it probably wouldn't cost us a lot to create signs and put them on posts in Muskosipi Park. Do we know relatively how much that might cost, like just to put like maybe 10 cautionary signs along the South Bear or the Bear Creek Trail system?
Thank you for your question through the chair. That's something we can come back with in terms of cost. There would be the Muskosipi, Crystal Lakes. There's a few different areas that we would look at, and we can come back with a price, with a cost on that.
Okay, that's great. So I guess I'll get to business if there isn't. Oh wait, there is more. So I will hold off.
Yeah, we do have those convex mirrors in some areas, and I was wondering what the cost, if you're going to be doing some research there, just find out what the cost of those are. Maybe they could be put in appropriate areas as well. So when you're going around a blind corner, both parties can see who's coming. So there's one right by the Elks Hall on that pathway going into the valley there. And Councillor Thiessen, sorry to interrupt you, but go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm gonna actually make two motions here, and I'm open to any wordsmithing that comes forward. But first things first, I'm going to direct administration to bring forward a report, including budget, regarding signage throughout the Muskosipi Park Trail system and other areas of importance, with costs implicated as well in that. You can leave the cost implication, but include costs. Yeah.
Okay. Any questions on that?
Can I suggest that instead of identifying areas, you just say as appropriate or where appropriate?
Yeah, definitely. I'm open to wordsmithing.
Any other changes that anyone? Okay. So with that, you got all that recorded, so it's in the books for life. Okay. I call for the motion to vote. And that passes unanimously. Thiessen, you had a second motion?
Yeah, and this one's more specifically on e-bike use. So I would move that to direct administration to bring back a report regarding e-bike safety along our trail systems and throughout the city, and what other municipalities are doing in regards to e-bikes and safety. And I'm open to wordsmithing, as I see Councillor Bressie.
Oh yeah, you got. Well, I don't know what you said, but you sure got him wound up. Councillor Bressie, go ahead.
I mean, council knows that I love e-scooters, so I'm wondering if you'd be open to a friendly amendment adding e-scooters into that as well.
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah, I think any electronic conveyance system that isn't a four-wheel car or quad or whatever should definitely be looked at in this. And since those are both kind of moving us forward in our public transportation systems, yeah, I'm totally open to e-bikes or e-scooters as well.
Great, thank you.
Right. Is that including handicapped vehicles? Yeah. Some of them have a lot of bling. I don't know.
They move pretty fast too, but
Okay, so there is a motion on the floor. I call for the vote. And that passes unanimously. Any other question? One comment from Mr. Bosch, Mrs. Bosch. Miss Bosch.
I just want to make a comment to Enforcement Services that during the weekend of the street performers, while we had that and the Rib Fest, the night market and the farmers market, street market, it was great to see that heavy presence of Enforcement Services, both on bike patrol and walking patrol, engaging with the public. It was fabulous. We have some pictures, you know, it shows, you know, that community mindedness, and as well as the RCMP involved in these events as well. So it's a great collaboration on both sides to see, for the public to see, you know, so thank you.
Yeah, my comment is I really like the initiative of going to the bike parks and sitting down and chatting with the kids and having them engaged, because I know as a grandpa, the grandchildren love to be able to talk police enforcement, and so yeah, put on the hat and maybe ring the bell or the siren on the car, or whatever it happens to be. It's something that they've never done, probably won't get a chance to do, and that just makes them feel that much better and comfortable knowing that they know a police officer or enforcement person. So keep that up, I think, is very important. So thank you very much for your report, and we will move on to correspondence. We have none. We have 2 items of other business. One is 5.1, Grande Prairie Community Opioid Response Framework. Mr. Bressie.
Great. Thank you, Chair O'Toole. This is just something I wanted to share with committee for its information. No action is needed, although the last council did decide, last time this plan came to them, to send it to council and give it an endorsement. So that's something you might choose to do, but I'll leave that up to you. What this is the Opioid Response Task Force is a community-based organization. It's the city backbones it. So myself and Councillor O'Connor serve on it. We've got the city does agendas and minutes, but very much it's not meant to be city-driven. It's meant to be community-driven to lead actions and lead plans. And what this plan is just a refresh. It's not a substantial rewrite, but it is a refresh of our action plan. A few things that are different is when the task force was first formed, it very much was focused on our street engaged, our inner city core, and it very much was largely focused on just including our frontline agencies. Since then, I think a lot of progress was made in our downtown core and helping make sure that there's services there. And so the task force hasn't stopped talking about those things, but we've also realized that most of the opioid deaths in our city actually happen in a home that somebody is renting or owns. And so we've really made a lot of effort to expand to addressing all opioid use across the community. And to do that, we've expanded our membership. We've had the public and Catholic school boards get re-engaged. We've had the college dip in and out of it. We've got the GP Construction Association as a member on the task force. The chamber remains engaged. The ministerials sent a participant. And so we really are trying to become more holistic, community-based. In this new plan I'm giving to you, like I said, it's more a refresh than a rewrite, but 2 things that I will draw committee's attention to that are very different than the last plan is this one does have more of a focus on youth, realizing that we do have youth dying of opioid use in our community. And also, if you can get to the youth, that's probably the best way to addressing the opioid crisis 5 to 10 years from now. So we've got some youth-based focus in there, and something that task force has been doing is we've got a youth subcommittee going on now. I don't know if it'll keep on staying focused or if it'll just kind of do a little bit of work and evaporate. But right now we do have some agencies and the school board talking about quarterly about what are the needs for youth in our community and starting to do some advocacy around that. The biggest change I'll draw committee's attention to, though, is we do have a 4-pillar response, and our first 3 pillars are prevention, harm reduction, and treatment and recovery, and those remain the same. But if you read our old response plan, the 4th pillar was enforcement. Task force decided that that pillar is now called first responders, and it still does include policing. We still do think that there is an enforcement element to opioid response, but also want to be more holistic and realize there's also a fire, there's an EMS, and there's also, we'd consider frontline shelter workers and street outreach team members and MOP members to be first responders too. And one very significant thing we added into our plan was the final action item in the first responders pillar is ensure that mental health supports are in place for first responders and frontline workers to address the impact of the additional stress and trauma generated by the opioid crisis. I think perhaps one of the greatest risks facing our community is the PTSD and the other psychological harm that our first responders see. You want to take care of your people, but also that's a limited pool we have of people that are the front lines here, and we are very concerned about the impact on our community if those people burn out and leave the field. And so that's something that a lot more action needs to go into. There's one more action item in here that I'm actually going to make a motion concerning in a couple minutes, but maybe I'll stop there for now, Councillor O'Toole, and see if anybody has questions before I get to asking committee to pass a motion.
This doesn't happen very often, but Councillor Bressie has stopped talking. So is there any questions for Mr. Bressie? Ms. Blackmore.
I found the report really interesting, and I'm wondering, you found a way to reach a lot of different avenues of people in the city. I'm wondering, how are you managing to reach out to people who own the apartment buildings and, may have a number of doors that they're renting?
Yeah, and so it was how we reached out. Honestly, it was myself mostly and a few other councillors about 1.5 years ago calling different organizations in the community and saying, hey, you need to be on this opioid response task force. So it was largely an informal call out. I think that we do have a very open membership, and we do have if anybody wants to join us, we'd love to have them join us. And one of the calls I did make, unfortunately didn't get a positive response, but some of the realty organizations in town I did reach out to, and unfortunately wasn't able to get somebody on them, but that might be something that we want to do again. I think the other place that we're trying to figure out how to reach out to better is hotels as well. Something interesting is, compared to, if you read the provincial data, compared to other Alberta communities, we've got a very high proportion of deaths happening in our hotels. And that's actually the biggest concern for the task force right now. So I think we could use more representation from hotels and large landlords.
Interesting. Councillor Bosch.
Thank you, Chair O'Toole. My question is, it's great to see this many people on this task force, roughly 35 or so. I'm just curious what the engagement level is on having this many people. Like, that's not a small number of people to have on a task force or a committee. And is it more reporting? Is it building programs? I'm just curious how you get all these people together in a space.
So,
Go ahead.
So how it works is we've definitely got a different level of engagement with some people. Some people are at every single meeting, and some really do just read the emails and they just check in occasionally. But kind of how the task force is structured is because we wanted to have broad community voices to be able to give input, but also the task force is something that we see as a good place to push information out there, and we wanted lots of allies to push our information out there. So we have a really broad, everybody's welcome to the task force and our quarterly meetings to participate in conversations. But where the work actually happens is we've got subcommittees that actually do the work. And so what happens is the subcommittees, we've got an advocacy education one, we've got a education outreach committee, we've got I'm not even gonna, I know what they all do, but I'm not gonna pretend I know the names of them at any given time. But we do have these subcommittees that go out and do the actual work. And kind of what happens is they come back to the task force and they either say, hey, here's what we're seeing, here's what we're thinking. A, help us get word out, and B, if you've got input, please let us know that. So the task force is kind of an advisory body where it's these subcommittees that are actually doing the work.
Okay, great, perfect, great to hear.
Councillor Thiessen.
Yeah, as somebody who sat on the Education and Awareness Subcommittee for a while, one thing that was really eye-opening to me was we had a lot of youth participation, and apparently, like that's an issue growing in our schools too that they wanted to address and educate people about. So, even though Councillor Bressie couldn't list all of them off, I couldn't list all of them off either. But the work that they do and they bring back is very informative and very engaging. So, as a member who helped create the first 4 pillars, I know that I was always a bit burned by the enforcement, Pillar 4. So for this, especially in regards to our first responders who have to deal with it, I'm really buoyed by the change, and I think it's appropriate. We're not just addressing the people who have addictions, we're addressing the people who are dealing with the people who have addictions when it may go wrong. So really, really happy to see that pillar. Before you get to any motions, though, I would like to make a motion that committee send this report, or I guess this plan, to council for endorsement. And just speaking to that, with such a significant change to the 4th pillar, I think it's important that council endorses this as a whole, that we have another chance to look through it and see the good work of the Community Opioid Task Force. And we also, nod our hats to, what we're trying to do for our first responders as well, and I'll acknowledge that work there. So I hope committee will support that, sending it to council so we can all take a really good look at it and appreciate what it's contributing to our community with its many partners.
All right. Any questions on the motion? And I call for the vote. That passes unanimously, and thank you for that vote, motion. Okay, Mr. Bressie?
Great, thank you. I also would like to make a motion that would help the task force with its work if committee pass that. And the motion is to direct administration to report back with a comparative inventory of treatment, recovery, addictions, and mental health services in Grande Prairie and other Alberta urban areas. And just to speak to this comes from Pillar 3 in the action plan. Says, identify gaps in treatment, recovery, addictions, and mental health medical services by creating an inventory to compare the resources available in Grande Prairie and other communities. Advocate for Grande Prairie to have services at least equal to other regional centers. To speak to this, what we know is we've got some of the highest per capita opioid deaths in our community. Also, and when you look at related statistics such as houselessness, we've got highest per capita of those as well. We also know anecdotally that there are treatment and recovery services that are available in other centers that have less of a problem that aren't available here. And that's a big issue, but when we advocate to government, it's always anecdotal. We're saying, we know that this exists in Lethbridge and Red Deer and Edmonton and all those, but why isn't it in the north? But anecdotal just doesn't help you with advocacy. We really do need to have a firm information about what's going on elsewhere. And I think most of this plan, the committee can handle on it, the community can handle, but I don't think that that our partner organizations are as well equipped as city administrations to go out and do this inventory work. So I'm hoping that council will direct administration to do this work for the task force. And I also think that'll help our advocacy efforts, because that actually is on the council advocacy priorities list too, is advocating for at least equal services here in Grande Prairie. I'd argue that with higher per capita opioid deaths, we should probably have more services than elsewhere, but we should at least have equal here in Grande Prairie, and this inventory would help with that.
Great. Any questions on that? See none. I'll go ahead with the vote. That passes unanimously, and thank you for bringing that forward. And go ahead, you got one more comment?
Great, and yeah, just one last comment. Well, two, I guess. First, just thanks committee for taking the time to look at this today. I really do appreciate that. I think this really is important work that our community is doing. So thank you to committee, and thank you for all the organizations and folks who are involved with the task force. And the last thing that I want to do is just direct everybody's attention to the website, everyoneisimpacted.com. That's the Opioid Response Task Force website. It's recently been redesigned, and it's a great place to learn not just what the task force is doing, but if you need any resources in the community. You've got a youth who's in crisis and needs help, or you're an employer and you need to know how to direct your employees to get help, or you're finding needles in the community. If you need any resource that's associated with opioid use, then you'll find how to access that resource at everyoneisimpacted.com. So please check out that website yourself, and I'd ask your help of getting the awareness of that website out there. Whenever I talk to somebody about these things, I say, hey, make sure you check out everyoneisimpacted.com. I think if more people are saying that, it's a great resource that not enough people are aware of.
Can I get you to do me a favor and just send that out as a link to the council members, please?
Happy to. Thank you.
Okay. And Mr. Berg?
Yeah, just a question from Mayor Clayton. She asks, are you chair of the task force, Dylan?
I am the reluctant chair of the task force that would love to. It's my hope is that in the next few months we find another chair for it, just because I think that a non-politician could do a better job of advocating for the task force than I can. So I'm kind of the reluctant chair for now. And if anybody in the community knows anybody that might be a good person to step in that position, the awkward thing is you can't really have, I don't know if it's best for me to chair it, but also you can't really have an executive director of an organization that's got their own thing to work of, or just people that are on it. It's kind of awkward for anybody to chair it.
Excellent. Thank you for your report. I'm going to move down to 5.2, Indigenous Relations Advisor Introduction. And I think we're going to have Angela Sutherland introduce this gentleman that's beside her.
So much different being at this table than over there. Always think this is a Star Trek table. Reminds me of a, yes, anyways. Thank you very much. I'm very pleased to introduce Warren Necrock. He has started with us as of July 11th as our Indigenous Relations Advisor, and we're really excited to have him. And we've been keeping him busy in terms of getting to know the community. He's new to the community as well as to the organization, so just getting out there, introducing him and doing multiple meet and greets and getting him aware. So I'd like to hand it over to him and he can do a brief introduction.
Please, welcome.
Good morning, yes, thank you. There we go, thank you very much. Danse, Warren Robbie Necrock Nitsigessen. Hello, my name is Warren Robbie Necrock. It's wonderful to be here. So a little bit about me. I've grown up in my home community, Soto First Nation, which is in Treaty 6, Saskatchewan. I am passionate about truth and reconciliation and Indigenous rights ever since high school. I was selected to go to the Youth United Nations in Geneva, Switzerland to speak on behalf of Indigenous knowledge in a modern day society and its importance. So this has been an ongoing passion project for me, and I'm excited to integrate this into my work. My education that followed that was a bachelor degree in education with the University of Saskatchewan, the Indian Teacher Education Program, where we learned about the Truth and Reconciliation Calls to Action, and how to implement that in our classroom, and also create a culture within our organization of the schools that we went into and became leaders in. So this just perfectly aligned. I'm very excited to be here, and I just feel like I'm doing the exact same education, the same teaching, but just on a larger scale. So this platform is just wonderful here today. So I've worked with other Indigenous organizations in the past. I've worked with the Federation of Sovereign Indigenous Nations. I've worked with the Office of Treaty Commissions, and I've spoken on just truth and reconciliation matters. So this is definitely something that's just near and dear to my heart. And yeah, I've done some consulting in education with land-based teachings and storytelling, and I think that there's a wonderful story here in Grande Prairie for Indigenous relations, and I'm really excited to tap into that resource and share that with everyone. And everyone's been very welcoming here so far. I've met with with many departments. I can't say all of them because it's a huge organization, but I've met with many people, and everybody seems on board with these initiatives. So I'm excited for what we can bring forth in the future. Thank you.
Welcome. And I'm sure our future is going to be a lot brighter now that you're here. How's that for a warm-up? Looking for, we got Councillor Berg here.
Yeah, thank you, Chair O'Toole. Welcome, Warren. It's great to have you in Grande Prairie. For those people out in the community that want to engage in conversation with you and find out a little bit more, how would they reach you?
Yeah, so currently I'm at the Office of Social Development, 99th, Office on 99th. And honestly, like, I'm open to people swinging by, and I know we have a lot of comings and goings in our office with the Ukrainian initiatives. I do have a contact information and a card. I'd be happy to share that as well, and yeah, I'm open to it.
Yeah, just to add on to that too, we're going in terms of communications wise to make sure that we have a presence on the website as well and how to reach him. So we're working on that as well.
Great, thanks. And once again, welcome.
Councillor Thiessen, Bosch, and Bressy, did you want in on this? And O'Connor.
Looks like you're going to get the full council welcome there, Mr. Necrock. I'd just like to say welcome. I know, Warren, we've labored hard to find someone who's appropriate to sit in your chair, and it appears that we have so far. So welcome to the City of Grande Prairie and our organizational fold. I look forward to how you can better advise us, inform us, and educate us on how we can achieve some of the calls to action and move towards truth and reconciliation in our own community. So thank you for bringing your presence to this, and congratulations on the job. I look forward to working with you in the future.
Sir Bosch.
Thank you, Chair O'Toole. Welcome. You'll love Grande Prairie. Trust me. You won't move. My question to you is, aside of truth and reconciliation and dealing with the staff at the city and stakeholders in the community, are you going to be involved with the housing and homelessness issue and the high numbers of Indigenous people that are involved in housing and homelessness? Are you going to get involved in that sector and, maybe problem solve, perhaps give some ideas of what you've seen in other communities?
That's a wonderful question, and I do hope that the work that I do affects those areas in a positive way, and that we can move forward in a good way, because there are a lot of Indigenous people in those areas. I think it comes down to, as far as healing goes, it comes down to acknowledgement of traumas, acknowledgement of issues that have happened in the past, and then moving forward in a good way by bringing forth cultural understanding and sensitivities to these matters, and just bringing forth the positive implementation of the culture and recognition and seamless Indigenous engagement of Grande Prairie. I think if we move forward in a good way, I think that it'll positively affect those communities, and it'll hopefully we will see it in the homelessness as well. I think the two are directly related. And
Agreed.
See it.
Thank you. I look forward to that.
Councillor Bressy.
Great. Thank you, Chair O'Toole. I've actually got a motion, so maybe bump me to the end of the queue.
I will.
Thank you.
I'm going to bump this lady right here ahead of you, Councillor Blackmore.
Well, thank you, Councillor O'Toole. First of all, welcome to Grande Prairie, Warren. It's good to see you. It's been several months getting the position filled to find the right person. So obviously you're the right person because you're here. I do have a question, but it's actually for Ms. Sutherland. You've been working hard to deliver unconscious bias training, and there's some new training, more training happening shortly. I'm just wondering, was it council direction to have all city staff trained in unconscious bias? And I'm just wondering where we are at in what percentage do you think we might have done? And I'm not asking for a concrete answer, just a general answer.
So the question is, you're asking how many have been trained so far? Yeah. I don't have a number in front of me right now, but I would say, off the top of my head, probably between maybe around 100 to 2 in between there.
So we still have a long ways to go. Okay. We'll keep working on it. Thanks.
All right. Got one more in the queue here. Mr. O'Connor.
Thank you, Chair O'Toole. Well, welcome, Warren. I am so pleased that the city has taken the steps to the call to actions and that your addition to the city is going to be the first step and reconciliation. So thank you very much for joining us. Thank you.
Great. I think we've done our welcomes, and Councillor Bressie, you wanted to do some business.
Yeah, that's right. I do have some business before. I also do want to say welcome. It's feels like years we've been waiting for you. You're in an unusual position in that it's rare for council to actually say no. This is a specific position we need in our organization, and I was proud of council to take the unusual step of make sure there is resource in this. But to get to my business, I want to make sure that now that we have this position filled, that we don't lose sight of it, and that we get to hear updates on what's going on. And so just to create a natural checkpoint for us to hear what Warren's hearing and hear what steps might be next, and more to hear what action us as council might have to take, or there be a natural check-in for us. So I would move that committee direct administration to present an update on efforts towards truth and reconciliation and Indigenous efforts in Q1 of 2023. Just the idea is let you get your feet under you, let you hear what's going on in the community, and then just create a natural place for you to come here to council so that we can start talking about what are the next steps that we should be having.
Go ahead.
Just in response to that too, I think part of the, I've been working closely with Warren on how do we check back with council, and I think part of the work plan is to come back with one of the deliverables for the position is around the framework and how it meets different TRC's called or Truth and Reconciliation calls to action. So at some point here in discussions with Director Manuel, how are we going to bring that back? So that it's definitely in our vision to do so.
Cool. Awesome.
Warren, he must like you because he would have probably called you in 2 weeks. He would want to know what you've done so far. So it's all good. So with that, there's a motion on the table, and call the vote.
Sorry, Chair O'Toole, if I could just amend the word Indigenous efforts to Indigenous relations, I think might be a better word.
Okay.
Thank you.
Cancel my vote and start over again.
Sorry to be persnickety, but sorry, just got withdrawn. But I think how I like it to read, just trying to find it now, is on efforts towards truth and reconciliation and Indigenous relations. So on what's written now, if you just strike out Indigenous efforts. Great, that looks good to me. Thank you.
There, I think we're good. Call for the vote again. And that passes unanimously. And so thank you for being here today. And I welcome you once again. And I hope you find Grande Prairie everything you wanted. And we'll see you soon.
Wow, Uta, and I'm grateful for you all here today. Thank you very much. Exemaga.
Right. I have Mr. O'Connor that would like to be 5.3 at this time.
Okay, thank you, everyone. I've had a number of calls from people in the downtown core between the hours of 1 and 5 in the morning, where there are people on bikes. They took 10 seconds to break into Midwest's vehicle and stole some stuff out of that vehicle. I've seen it on camera. I've also had another person in the north part of the city complaining about a number of people crossing his property, and foot traffic seems to be up. So the question is to enforcement services, what other steps are we taking for these people that are putting pressures on these people on bikes and breaking into vehicles? Like it's, I don't know. We need to put some more money at this or do something. I don't know.
Mr. Manuel.
Yep. Thank you very much. So I'd say the nearest step we're taking is next week, the first staffing of the public security pilot project will be on the ground. But that's not going to solve all of the concerns that are being raised here. What that is that will provide two bodies that provide 24/7 security coverage in specified areas within the city that are kind of intelligent-led problems that we're looking to address. However, simply walking through a parking lot or even riding a bike, even if we believe there's potentially some suspicion to that, certainly there's a degree of visual deterrence that occurs. For instance, the particular property you're referring to with people walking through the parking lot, they have security. So some of that stuff is not going to be easily resolved. However, we do want to create a more eyes, more ears, a stronger, as was mentioned, it can take 10 seconds to break into a vehicle, and it can take several minutes to dispatch, even if you saw it happening, somebody to respond to that, right? So it is about looking at the totality of options available to us. How do we make targets more resilient so they're not subject to or susceptible to that break-in and to begin with, as well as more eyes, more ears, which we're adding, but certainly not to the extent to the number of people that are out looking around. So it's not that we're doing nothing, but we're also trying to address some of the social circumstances in the community, and not just our community, but communities across the province and the country that are leading to some of these behaviors. Now, one thing to note that I think is important to come back to was there is a renewed focus on social disorder and minor criminal code offenses that's occurring in the community right now, and it's required, and I'm glad the attention's being placed on it. But that's because we're shifting from a place where several years ago, in 2014, 2015, those of you that were around the table or in the community would recall, we were having community meetings discussing the volume of armed robberies, homicides, those sorts of things. So our enforcement strategies and resourcing had been dedicated to reducing those, which has happened, which is a fantastic piece. But that does mean that there has been gaps left on some of that other stuff, which was the lower end criminal code stuff. That certainly has an impact on people's lives, and that's our current focus area.
Is there any thought to having a curfew? Is that ever been, and saying between these hours, you just can't be wandering around, or is that too draconian?
So some communities have youth curfews, which, when challenged, have had, I think when they've been challenged, they've been overturned. On an adult, there's not a chance that we could put in a curfew, just because the Charter of Freedoms and Rights doesn't allow us to restrict, movement through public spaces and those sorts of things.
I had to ask a question, but thank you.
Right. Thank you so much for your input today. Thank you for your response. They're moving on to bylaw and policy review. We have none, but we do have an outstanding items list, and I think Mr. Manuel, you'll deal with that.
I will. So for items 1209, 1204, that was the Ukrainian initiatives as well as the bike safety reports. I think we dealt with those two today. I know there's some follow-up on the one, but I'm sure that's going to be a new item. In reference to 1199 and 1201, so that's the CMHA request and the old bypass enforcement. we're still waiting on some further information that had to be acquired from third parties to bring that forward. And we have a couple staff absences coming up as well. So I've been requested to I'd revise that date to September 13th meeting to bring both of those items forward. And item 1210 will remain on track for the Q1 23.
1204 is off the record too. Okay. I'm looking for a motion to acknowledge the changes in the outstanding items list. And Councillor Bressie, please.
Yeah, I move that we accept as amended.
Thank you. Call for the vote. And that passes unanimously. I'd like to thank all the staff and all council members for attending the Protective and Social Services Committee for today. Have a good day. Thank you very much. And all those that are on the screen watching.